Today I'm going to tackle all about the happiness and ultimate purpose. Happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence by Aristotle. Aristotle begins his discussion of ethics by showing that every act that a person does is directed toward a particular purpose, aim, or what the Greeks called telos. There is a purpose why one does something, and for Aristotle, a person's actions manifest a good that she aspires for. Every pursuit of a person hopes to achieve a good. One eats for the purpose of the good, that it gives sustenance to the body. A person pursues a chosen career, aiming for a good, that is to provide a better future for her family. A person will not do anything which is not beneficial to her. Even a drug user thinks that substance abuse will cause her good. This does not necessarily mean that using drugs is good, but a drug addict would want to believe that such act is good. Therefore, for Aristotle, the good is considered to be the telos or purpose for which all acts seek to achieve. Happiness depends on ourselves more than anybody else. Aristotle enshrines happiness as a central purpose of human life and a goal in itself. As a result, he devotes more space to the topic of happiness than any thinker prior to the modern era, living during the same period as Mencius, but on the other side of the world, he draws some similar conclusions. That is, happiness depends on the cultivation of virtue. True, his virtues are somewhat more individualistic than the essentially social virtues of the Confucians. Yet, as we shall see, Aristotle was convinced that a genuinely happy life required the fulfillment of a broad range of conditions, including physical as well as mental well-being. In this way, he introduced the idea of a science of happiness in the classical sense in terms of a new field of knowledge.
Hello guys, good day. Before we start, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Rian Pigaysan, but short, Feel 101, major in Filipino. So, the topic that will be discussed is all about virtue as excellence. When we say virtue, it's a behavior showing high moral standards. And high moral standards means you value what is right and what is wrong. So excellence is achieved as the self-awareness of the appreciation of the uniqueness of self. And the uniqueness of self-appreciation is about acknowledging the positive within you without to need to compare yourself to others. So, as what I have observed from these days, in reality, many people are comparing themselves to others and look down themselves. So there's a few tips that will help you to appreciate and respect the uniqueness to others. First, avoid comparison. Accept people as they are. Focus on the positive aspects of people. And that's all for today, guys. And I hope you learn with my report. That's a little bit. So have a good day and God bless.
According to Aristotle, moral virtue is a state of character concerned with choice, lying in a mean that is the mean relative to us, this being determined by a rational principle and by the principle by which the man of practical wisdom would determine it. Being superfluous with regard to manifesting a virtue is no longer an ethical act because one has gone beyond the middle. Therefore, one can always be excessive in her action, but an act that is virtuous cannot go beyond the middle. According to Aristotle again, developing a practical wisdom involves learning from the experience. Aristotle moral virtues and exemplified by courage, temperance, and liberality. The key intellectual virtues are wisdom, which governs ethical behavior, understanding, which is expressed in scientific endeavor, and contemplation. Why moral virtue is important? Virtue is the moral excellence and exhibitions of good behavior by a person. Virtue are important because they are the basic qualities necessary for our well-being and happiness. What is moral virtue and misotes? The middle measure of an action, feeling, or passion. Nothing is lacking or too much from an act that morally good. A moral virtuous person is concerned with achieving her appropriate action in a manner that is either excessive nor deficient. What are the three most important virtues? The cardinal virtues are not the same as the three theological virtues: faith, hope, and charity or love, named in 1 Corinthians 13. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. How do we become virtuous according to Aristotle? By making sacrifices of ourselves for the good of others, by performing virtuous action until they become habitual, by engaging on philosophical reflection. What does Aristotle mean when he says that virtue is a kind of man? When Aristotle says virtue is a kind of man, he refers to the ideal amount of virtue that makes us the best we can become, and in order to find our man, we must practice cultivating these virtues like funding actions that will promote the opposite. What is mean and how it is related to virtue ethics? Virtue ethics is a philosophy developed by Aristotle and other ancient Greeks. It is the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. This character-based approach to morality assumes that we acquire virtue through practice, so virtue ethics help us understand what it means to be a virtue human being. What is the main idea of virtue ethics? Virtue ethics mainly deals with honesty and morality of a person. It states that practicing good habits such as honesty, generosity makes a moral and virtuous person. It guides a person with a specific role for resolving the ethical complexity. What is virtue and why is it important? Virtues are important because they are the basic qualities necessary for our well-being and happiness. By recognizing the importance of virtues in our lives, it will lead to better communication, understanding, and acceptance between us and our fellow men. What is the highest virtue according to Aristotle? Prudence, also known as practical wisdom, is the most important virtue for Aristotle. In war, soldiers must fight with prudence by making judgments through practical wisdom. The virtue is a must to obtain because courage requires judgments to be made. The 12 virtues of Aristotle.
Hi everyone, good day. I am here right now to discuss my topic. My topic is all about the moral agent and context. And by the way, my name is Juan A. Escotor, Beset 1, Batch 1, Major in Filipino. Ramon Castillo Reyes was born in 1935 in the Philippines. He attended the Ateneo de Manila University in Quezon City, where he earned his Bachelor of Art degree in 1956. The one who is tasked to think about what is right and why it is so, and to choose to do so in an essay about man and historical action that explain who one is or who am I, is the most fundamental sense, is another topic in the act of philosophizing, a cruise point and product of many forces and events that happened outside of one choosing. Who is the individual who must engage himself, herself in ethical thoughts and decision making? Greeks even had famous saying for it, epimelia heoto, which means, as translated into English as known theyself. Dr. Ramon Reyes identified the four cross points: the physical, interpersonal, societal, and historical. First is the physical. It is the function of physical event in the past and material factors in the present that one did not have a choice. You did not choose to be a human being, nor to have this particular set of biological parents or to be born and grow up in such physical environment. Next is interpersonal. Interpersonal is a personality, character traits, and your overall way of doing and thinking about things have all been shaped by the character of your parents and how they brought you up. All of these are also affected by the people surroundings, like siblings, relatives, classmates, and workmates. Those had been shaped by one relationship as well as the physical factors that affects how one thinks and feels. Next is social or societal. Reyes argues that who one is molded in large part by the kind of society and culture, which for the most part, one did not choose. The one belongs to Filipino have their own way of doing things. Example, pagmamano, family ties, closely knit, and etc. The last one is the historical. Historical is the events that once people had undergone. In short, once people has to reshape who one is right now. Examples, the Philippines had a long history of colonization that affected how Philippine society has been formed and how Philippine culture has developed. Culture and ethics. A common opinion many people hold is that one's culture dictates what is right or wrong to an individual. Saint Ambrose, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. One's culture is inescapable, that is, one has to look into the standards of his/her own society to resolve or her ethical issues. How one relates to oneself, her close relations with other societies and with the natural world are all predetermined by one membership to one's society and culture. Generalizations concerning one's supposed cultural traits sometimes end up as an empty stereotypes, especially since one may be hard put to think if any other culture does not exhibit such traits. Hospitality. Can we say that the Chinese are not hospitable? Most probably, they are hospitable too, but they may exhibit such hospitality in a radically different ways. Hospitality, a Filipino way of thinking. Morality is Filipino morality, different from Chinese morality. Filipinos are communal and Americans are individualistic. Filipinos have different set of moral values. Who one is a project of oneself. A human individual has freedom. Freedom is not absolute. One does not become something because he chooses to be. It is up to you on who you want to become. James Rachel's 1941 to 2003 American philosopher provides a clear argument against cultural relativism. He defines cultural relativism as the position that claims there is no such thing as an object. Truth is the real of morality. There are different moral codes. There is no correct moral codes that cultures must follow. Each culture has its own standard of right and wrong. He argues against cultural relativism because of its logic. Cultural relativism confuses a statement of fact that different cultures have different moral codes, which is merely descriptive, with a normative statement that there cannot be an objective truth in morality.
Hi everyone, my name is Carol Faye Cuevas, Blessed 1, Major in Filipino, Batch 1, and now we're going to tackle about the moral deliberation. Moral deliberation will be defined as a direction, filtering, and weighing consciously or unconsciously of relevant moral principles, heuristics, or concepts that identify morally relevant features and thereby create a moral context. A practical decision is a decision as to what to do. The process of thinking that produces a practical decision is known as deliberation. At the start of a piece of deliberation, a person is undecided as to which of several courses of action to take. Where the selecting or non-selecting of one of those courses of action is seen as depending on moral consideration. The moral deliberation is moral deliberation or ethical deliberation. We take the terms moral and ethical to be interchangeable. Deliberation might be interrupted, or the person may just give up thinking about the problem. But if neither of these things happen, then the deliberation ends with the selections of a course of action. The selected course of action might not be one of the ones originally considered. She might have rejected all of those and thoughts of another course of action altogether. There are two types of moral deliberation. First, surveying the facts based on our experience of which facts are relevant. Example, whether one act is harmful to someone or against the law. The second is weighing the facts based on rules of priority and society typically endorses. For example, the rule that long-range goals are better than short-range ones. And also there are the elements of moral deliberation. Ethical deliberation can be viewed as involving the following elements: moral principles, an appreciation of the situation, a review of possible courses of action, application of the principles, decision or selection of one of the practical possibilities. And also there are the examples of the moral decision. Some examples of these virtues are honesty, courage, compassion, love, fidelity, integrity, fairness, and self-control, among others. When making a decision based on this approach, a person should act according to the highest potential of our character and the development of these virtues.
Utilitarianism. What is utilitarianism? To address the issue about ancestral land in Mill's ethical framework of utilitarianism, it still stands to its doctrine, which is greatest good for the greatest number of people. Through this, one cannot just claim a land which may affect the others. Prior to the issue of group, utilitarianism states that whichever it benefits the lands the most, the legality and ownership will then be surrendered to them. As for the issue for the global arena, utilitarianism suggests that an action, for instance, by a Filipinos within the Philippine territory, technically cannot remain a matter for Filipino only, if such actions can potentially affect those outside the borders of the nation. Natural law theory. Thomas Aquinas' natural law theories always upholds the principles
that must guide the individual in whatever action she will take, especially if it affects larger society.
Human life, care, truth, and harmony must be considered when the larger whole is at stake. This is because the harmonious social life, the people in the society do not value human life. On the other hand, the demand of the natural law for a peaceful and orderly social life be put in danger by acts of criminality and terrorism. Hence, those acts must be condemned. Let's proceed to another ethical framework, which is deontology. Immanuel Kant, or Kant, is the proponent of deontology. He argues with the use of principles of universalizability in dealing with issues about conflict in the society. According to him, there is no manner of heteronomous rules that should dictate one's choice of actions. However, one is able to follow any heteronomous laws if such law is in accordance with one's understanding of moral duty. Everyone must understand why it is the right thing to do, and not because someone else imposed you to do so. Hence, people in the society must make sure the laws and rules are in line with what universalizable moral duty will prescribe. Virtue ethics. Aristotle's virtue ethics prescribes methods as the guide to all the actions taken by a person in dealing with the community. Justice, liberty, magnificence, among others, are social-oriented Aristotelian virtues. Thus, a person must be guided by those virtues in every dealing in a society. However, one must take note that those virtues are not fixed point, which means that one will have a method that is determined by the particular context. Best example is an OFW who must balance the need for acculturation on one hand and keeping one's Filipino identity on the other. To the final conclude, each of the four ethical framework is starting point of thinking. Every person's moral responsibility towards society are large.